Everyone has those nights, the ones where you are too tired, too drained, or too done with the day to stand at a stove and actually cook a meal. You do not need a recipe. You do not need energy. You need something warm and filling that comes together in minutes with almost no cleanup and almost no effort. These are the meals you reach for when cooking feels impossible, but you still want something real. The lazy dinners that save the night without asking anything of you. If you have ever stood in front of the refrigerator with zero energy and no plan, this list is for you. These are 25 lazy recipes to make when you don't feel like cooking. Subscribe before we begin. The countdown starts now. Scrambled eggs on toast. The 5-minute supper that turns 2 eggs and a slice of bread into something warm and satisfying with 1 pan to wash. Cost today around $1. Fed 1. You beat 2 eggs with a splash of milk. You cook them low and slow in butter, stirring gently. You spoon them over buttered toast. The eggs go soft and creamy. The toast crunches underneath. The butter ties it together. Scrambled eggs on toast are the universal lazy supper. Fast, cheap, and endlessly forgiving. 2 eggs and toast, dinner when you have nothing left to give. Loaded baked potato. The supper that lets the microwave do all the work. A potato topped with whatever is in the refrigerator. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You microwave a potato until soft. You split it open and load it with butter, cheese, sour cream, and anything else on hand. The potato goes fluffy. The cheese melts in. The toppings pile up however you like. The loaded baked potato is the ultimate no-effort supper. The microwave does everything. A potato and some toppings, a full supper with no real cooking. Grilled cheese. The classic lazy supper of melted cheese between buttered bread, crisped in a pan. Cost today around $1.50. Fed 1. You butter 2 slices of bread. You lay cheese between them. You cook in a pan until golden and the cheese melts. The bread goes golden and crisp. The cheese melts through. It is warm and satisfying. Grilled cheese is the comfort supper everyone falls back on. 1 pan, 3 ingredients. Melted cheese on toasted bread. Comfort in minutes. Ramen upgrade. The instant noodles made better with an egg and whatever vegetables or leftovers you have. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You cook the ramen. You crack an egg into the hot broth and stir until it ribbons. You add any leftover vegetables or meat. The broth goes savory. The egg enriches it. The extras make it a real meal. Upgraded ramen turns a cheap packet into a full supper. Almost no effort required. A packet of ramen and an egg. Dinner in 5 minutes. Quesadilla. The supper that folds cheese into a tortilla and crisps it in a pan. Fast, hot, and filling. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You lay cheese on a tortilla and fold it. You crisp it in a dry pan on both sides. You cut it into wedges. The tortilla goes crisp. The cheese melts inside. It comes together in minutes. The quesadilla is a lazy night staple. Cheese, a tortilla, and 1 pan. A folded, cheesy tortilla. Supper in 3 minutes. Tuna melt. The open-face sandwich of tuna and cheese broiled until bubbling. No real cooking, just assembly and heat. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You mix tuna with mayonnaise. You spread it on bread and top with cheese. You broil until the cheese bubbles. The tuna goes creamy. The cheese melts and browns. The bread crisps underneath. The tuna melt is a fast, filling, lazy supper. A can, some cheese, and a broiler. A tuna melt under the broiler, hot supper with no effort. Some nights you have nothing left to give a stove. That is not a failure. Feeding yourself something warm anyway, however simple, is enough. Cereal for dinner. The unapologetic lazy supper of a big bowl of cereal and cold milk when cooking is simply not happening. Cost today around $1. Fed 1. You pour cereal into a bowl. You add cold milk. You eat it with a spoon. The cereal stays crisp. The milk goes sweet. It asks nothing of you. Cereal for dinner is the honest lazy supper everyone has had. Zero cooking, zero shame. A bowl of cereal. Dinner when you are completely done. Microwave nachos. The supper that piles chips with cheese and microwaves them until melted and gooey. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You spread chips on a plate. You scatter cheese over them. You microwave until the cheese melts. You add salsa or sour cream. The chips stay crisp. The cheese goes gooey. The toppings pile on. Microwave nachos are a lazy night favorite. A plate, some chips, and a microwave. Chips and melted cheese, a snack that becomes supper. Peanut butter toast. The 2-minute supper of peanut butter spread thick on warm toast, filling and effortless. Cost today under $1. Fed 1. You toast bread. You spread peanut butter thick while it is warm. You add banana or honey if you have it. The toast goes warm and crisp. The peanut butter melts into it. It fills you up fast. Peanut butter toast is the simplest filling supper there is. Toast and a jar. Warm peanut butter toast. Supper in 2 minutes. Canned soup and bread. The supper that heats a can of soup and pairs it with bread or crackers. Warm and effortless. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You heat a can of soup. You serve it with bread or crackers for dipping. The soup goes warm and savory. The bread soaks it up. It warms you through. Canned soup and bread is the classic lazy supper. Open, heat, eat. A can of soup and some bread. Warm supper with no cooking. Bagel with cream cheese. The no-cook supper of a toasted bagel spread with cream cheese and whatever toppings you have. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You toast a bagel. You spread cream cheese on it. You add tomato, onion, or anything on hand. The bagel goes crisp. The cream cheese goes cool and rich. The toppings finish it. The bagel with cream cheese is a fast, filling, lazy supper. Toaster only. A bagel and cream cheese, supper without the stove. Microwave mac and cheese. The single-serving mac and cheese made right in a mug in the microwave. Cost today around $1.50. Fed 1. You cook macaroni in a mug of water in the microwave. You stir in cheese and a splash of milk until creamy. The macaroni goes tender. The cheese melts creamy. It is done in one mug. Microwave mug mac and cheese is the ultimate lazy comfort supper. One mug, no pot. Mac and cheese in a mug. Comfort with almost no effort. The point was never the cooking. It was making sure you ate something warm. On the hard nights, the simplest meal is a real act of caring for yourself. Hummus and pita. The no-cook supper of hummus scooped with pita bread and fresh vegetables. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You spoon hummus onto a plate. You cut pita into wedges. You add cucumber, tomato, or carrots. The hummus goes creamy. The pita scoops it up. The vegetables add crunch. Hummus and pita is a filling no-cook supper. Just assembly. Hummus and pita, a fresh supper with zero cooking. Fried egg rice. The supper that tops leftover rice with a fried egg and a splash of soy sauce. Cost today around $1.50. Fed one. You heat leftover rice. You fry an egg and set it on top. You add soy sauce. The rice goes warm. The egg yolk runs into it. The soy sauce flavors it all. Fried egg rice is a lazy night staple. Leftover rice and one egg. An egg over warm rice. Supper from leftovers. English muffin pizza. The supper that tops a split English muffin with sauce and cheese and broils it into a mini pizza. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You split an English muffin. You spread sauce and cheese on each half. You broil until bubbling. The muffin goes crisp. The cheese melts and browns. It tastes like pizza in minutes. The English muffin pizza is a fast, fun, lazy supper. A broiler and pantry staples. A mini pizza on a muffin. Supper straight from the broiler. Cottage cheese bowl. The no-cook supper of cottage cheese topped with fruit or vegetables and a little seasoning. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You spoon cottage cheese into a bowl. You add fruit for sweet or tomato and pepper for savory. The cottage cheese goes cool and creamy. The toppings finish it. No cooking at all. The cottage cheese bowl is a fast, filling, no-cook supper. Just a spoon. A cottage cheese bowl. Supper without turning on anything. Chips and bean dip. The supper that heats a can of refried beans with cheese for dipping chips. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You heat refried beans with a little cheese stirred in. You dip chips into it. The beans go warm and creamy. The cheese melts through. The chips scoop it up. Chips and bean dip is a lazy night favorite. A can and a bag. Warm bean dip and chips. A snack supper with no effort. Feeding yourself on an empty tank is quietly heroic. However small the meal, choosing to make something instead of nothing is a way of looking after yourself. Avocado toast. The no-cook supper of mashed avocado on toast with salt and pepper. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You toast bread. You mash avocado on top. You add salt, pepper, and a squeeze of lemon. The toast goes crisp. The avocado goes creamy. The lemon brightens it. Avocado toast is a fast, filling, lazy supper. A toaster and a knife. Mashed avocado on toast. A fresh supper in minutes.
Deli roll-ups. The no-cook supper of deli meat and cheese rolled together and eaten by hand. Cost today around $3. Fed one. You lay out slices of deli meat and cheese. You roll them together with a little mustard. The meat goes savory. The cheese folds inside. No cooking at all. Deli roll-ups are the ultimate no-effort supper. Just roll and eat. Meat and cheese roll-ups. Supper without a single pan. Baked bean toast. The supper that heats a can of baked beans and pours them over toast. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You heat baked beans. You toast bread. You pour the beans over the toast. The beans go thick and saucy. The toast soaks them up. It is warm and filling. Baked bean toast is a classic lazy supper. A can and a toaster. Baked beans on toast. Hot supper in 5 minutes. Yogurt and granola. The no-cook supper of yogurt layered with granola and fruit. Cost today around $2. Fed one. You spoon yogurt into a bowl.
You add granola and fruit. The yogurt goes cool and creamy. The granola adds crunch. The fruit sweetens it. Yogurt and granola is a fast, filling, no-cook supper. Just assembly. Yogurt and granola, a supper that needs no stove. Microwave sweet potato. The supper that microwaves a sweet potato and tops it with butter and cinnamon or savory fixings. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You microwave a sweet potato until soft. You split it and add butter, cinnamon, or savory toppings. The sweet potato goes soft and sweet. The butter melts in. The toppings finish it. The microwave sweet potato is a lazy, wholesome supper. The microwave does it all. A sweet potato and toppings, supper with no real cooking. Crackers, cheese, and fruit. The no-cook supper plate of crackers, sliced cheese, and fruit. A grazing dinner. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You arrange crackers, cheese slices, and fruit on a plate. You graze. The crackers snap. The cheese is rich. The fruit is sweet and fresh. The cracker and cheese plate is a lazy, satisfying, no-cook supper. Just a plate. Crackers, cheese, and fruit. A grazing supper with zero cooking. Instant oatmeal for dinner. The warm, filling supper of instant oatmeal made in one bowl with whatever toppings you have. Cost today around $1. Fed 1. You pour instant oatmeal into a bowl with hot water or milk. You stir until thick. You add fruit, honey, or peanut butter. The oatmeal goes warm and creamy. The toppings sweeten it. It fills you up fast. Oatmeal for dinner is a cozy, effortless supper. One bowl, no cooking. Warm oatmeal for supper. Comfort in one bowl. Hot dog in a bun. The 2-minute supper of a microwaved or boiled hot dog with whatever toppings you like. Cost today around $1.50. Fed 1. You heat a hot dog in the microwave or a pot of water. You put it in a bun with mustard, ketchup, or relish. The hot dog goes hot. The bun is soft. The toppings finish it. The hot dog is the classic no-effort supper. Heat and eat. A hot dog in a bun. Dinner in 2 minutes. Rice and soy sauce. The bare minimum supper of warm rice with butter and soy sauce. Cost today around $1. Fed 1. You heat rice. You stir in a little butter and a splash of soy sauce. The rice goes warm and glossy. The butter enriches it. The soy sauce flavors it. Rice and soy sauce is the simplest warm supper there is. One bowl. Warm rice with soy sauce. Supper from almost nothing. Frozen pizza. The supper that lets the oven do everything. A frozen pizza baked until crisp and bubbling. Cost today around $4. Fed 1. You put a frozen pizza in the oven. You bake until the cheese bubbles and the crust crisps. The crust goes crisp. The cheese bubbles. It comes out hot and satisfying. Frozen pizza is the ultimate hands-off supper. The oven does it all. A frozen pizza, a full hot supper with zero effort. PB&J. The no-cook supper of peanut butter and jelly between 2 slices of bread. Cost today under $1. Fed 1. You spread peanut butter on one slice and jelly on the other. You press them together. The peanut butter is rich. The jelly is sweet. The bread holds it together. The PB&J is the timeless, no-effort supper. 2 spreads and bread. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Supper in 1 minute. Microwave scrambled eggs. The supper that scrambles eggs right in a mug in the microwave. No pan to wash. Cost today around $1. Fed 1. You beat eggs in a mug with a splash of milk.
You microwave in short bursts, stirring until set. The eggs go soft. The mug holds it all. No pan required. Microwave mug eggs are the laziest hot protein there is. 1 mug. Scrambled eggs in a mug. Supper with no pan to wash. Chips and salsa supper. The no-cook supper of tortilla chips with salsa, guacamole, or bean dip. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You pour chips onto a plate. You scoop them with salsa, guacamole, or bean dip. The chips stay crisp. The dips are fresh and savory. It fills you up. Toasted cheese sandwich in the toaster. The supper of cheese melted onto bread using a toaster oven or under the broiler, even lazier than grilled cheese. Cost today around $1.50. Fed 1. You lay cheese on bread. You toast it in the toaster oven or under the broiler until melted. The bread goes crisp. The cheese melts and browns. No pan needed. The open toasted cheese is grilled cheese with even less effort. A toaster oven. Melted cheese on toast, grilled cheese without the pan. Microwave baked potato soup. The supper that turns a microwaved potato into a quick, creamy soup with milk and cheese. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You microwave a potato until soft. You mash it in a bowl with warm milk, butter, and cheese until creamy. The soup goes thick and creamy. The cheese melts through. It warms you fast. Microwave potato soup is a cozy, lazy supper. 1 potato, 1 bowl. A creamy potato soup from the microwave. Comfort in minutes. Tortilla wrap. The no-cook supper that wraps deli meat, cheese, and whatever vegetables you have in a tortilla. Cost today around $3. Fed 1. You lay meat, cheese, and vegetables on a tortilla. You add a little sauce and roll it up. The tortilla holds it all. The fillings stay fresh. No cooking at all. The tortilla wrap is a fast, filling, no-cook supper. Just roll and eat. A wrapped tortilla. Supper without a single pan. Instant noodles with cheese. The supper that stirs a slice of cheese into hot instant noodles for a creamy, savory bowl. Cost today around $1.50. Fed 1. You cook instant noodles. You drain most of the water and stir in a slice of cheese until melted. The noodles go creamy. The cheese coats every strand. It comes together in minutes. Cheesy instant noodles are a lazy comfort supper. A packet and a slice. Instant noodles with melted cheese. Creamy supper in minutes. Egg and cheese muffin. The supper that microwaves an egg and melts cheese onto an English muffin. A homemade breakfast sandwich for dinner. Cost today around $2. Fed 1. You microwave an egg in a mug until set. You put it on a toasted English muffin with cheese. The egg goes soft. The cheese melts. The muffin holds it together. The egg and cheese muffin is a fast, filling, lazy supper. A microwave and a toaster. A homemade egg and cheese muffin. Supper in minutes. Make one of these tonight. Just one. Make the scrambled eggs on toast when you have nothing left to give a stove. Or make the loaded baked potato and let the microwave do all the work. Or make the grilled cheese and remember that comfort does not require effort. Do not feel bad about eating simple. Do not scroll while you eat it. Set a plate down. Sit for a minute. Eat it slow. Let it remind you that on the hardest, most drained nights, making yourself something warm, however small and simple, is a real way of taking care of yourself. This was never about cooking.
It was about feeding yourself with kindness, even when you have nothing left in the tank. The meal is easy. Choosing to make it is what matters. In the comments, tell me which one you reach for when you do not feel like cooking. Is it the grilled cheese or the cereal for dinner? Tell me your go-to lazy supper. I am reading every one. Skillet lasagna. All the flavor of baked lasagna, without the oven, without the layering, and without the 45-minute commitment that no working mother had on the Tuesday night. A pound of ground beef cost 39 cents in 1963. Today, around $5.50. Lasagna noodles broken into pieces, ricotta, mozzarella, canned tomatoes, and garlic. Total then, under $1.50. Today, under $9. Fed 6. You brown the beef with garlic and drain the fat. You add broken lasagna noodles, canned tomatoes, and water. You cover and simmer 20 minutes until the noodles go tender. You drop spoonfuls of ricotta across the surface and scatter mozzarella over the top. You cover 2 more minutes until the cheese melts. The sauce goes deep red. The cheese melts into white pockets. The kitchen smells like an Italian Sunday on a Tuesday night. Skillet lasagna came from Italian-American working mother kitchens in the 1950s as the weeknight answer to the baked version that took all afternoon. Johnny Marzetti. The Midwestern church basement legend. The dish that fed every potluck, every school cafeteria, and every working family across Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois from the 1920s straight through the 1970s. A pound of ground beef cost 39 cents in 1962. Today, around $5.50. Elbow macaroni, canned tomatoes, 1 onion, green pepper, and cheddar. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 8. You brown the beef with onion and pepper. You drain the fat. You add canned tomatoes, dry macaroni, and water. You cover and simmer 15 minutes until the macaroni goes tender. You scatter cheddar across the top and cover 2 minutes. The macaroni absorbs the tomato. The cheese melts into orange pockets across the surface. The kitchen smells like a school cafeteria in 1962. Johnny Marzetti was invented at Marzetti's restaurant in Columbus, Ohio in the 1920s, named for the owner's brother. By 1950, it had spread through every church cookbook in the American Midwest. Hash brown skillet breakfast for dinner. The night she had nothing planned. The night the children cheered because breakfast for dinner felt like a small rebellion against the rules. The night she turned eggs and potatoes into a celebration on a budget of almost nothing. A bag of potatoes cost 29 cents in 1962. Today, around $3. 6 eggs, 1 onion, butter, and cheddar. Total then under 60 cents. Today, under $5. Fed 5. You shred potatoes and fry them in butter until golden and crisp. You add diced onion. You crack eggs over the top and scramble them into the potatoes. You scatter cheddar across the surface and cover until it melts. The potatoes go crisp and golden. The eggs go soft. The cheese melts into everything. Breakfast for dinner came from American farmhouse tradition, where eggs and potatoes were always on hand. By 1962, it was the no-budget weeknight rescue in working-class homes everywhere.
Wagon wheel skillet. The dinner the children requested by name because the pasta was shaped like wagon wheels, and that small detail made an ordinary beef and tomato supper feel like an event. A pound of ground beef cost 39 cents in 1966. Today, around $5.50. Wagon wheel pasta, canned tomatoes, 1 onion, and cheddar. Total then under $1. Today, under $8. Fed 6. You brown the beef with onion and drain the fat. You add canned tomatoes, dry wagon wheel pasta, and water. You cover and simmer 15 minutes until the pasta goes tender. You scatter cheddar across the top and cover 2 minutes. The pasta wheels catch the tomato sauce in their spokes. The cheese melts into orange pockets. The children always ate the wheels one at a time. Wagon wheel pasta dishes became a children's dinner favorite in American homes in the 1960s after the pasta shape gained national popularity. By 1966, it was a weeknight standard for families with young children. Skillet beef stew. The stew that did not take all day. The stovetop version a grandmother made in one pan in under an hour, when the Sunday Dutch oven version was simply too much for a tired Wednesday night. A pound of stew beef cost 69 cents in 1964, today around $7.99. Potatoes, carrots, onion, tomato paste, and beef broth. Total then under $1.50, today under $12. Fed 5. You brown the beef hard in the skillet until every surface is dark. You add onion and soften it. You stir in tomato paste, then broth. You add diced potatoes and carrots. You cover and simmer 45 minutes until the beef is tender. The broth goes deep brown. The beef softens into tender pieces. The vegetables absorb the beefy liquid. Beef stew came to America through Irish and English immigrant kitchens in the 1800s. By 1964, the one-pan stovetop version was a weeknight standard in working-class homes across the Northeast and Midwest. Skillet tuna tetrazzini. The elegant-sounding dinner made from a can of tuna and a box of spaghetti. The dish whose Italian name made it feel special, and whose ingredients cost under $1, and whose taste justified both. 2 cans of tuna cost 58 cents in 1962, today around $3.78. Spaghetti, cream of mushroom soup, mushrooms, peas, and Parmesan. Total then under $1, today under $7. Fed 5. You break spaghetti and boil it in the skillet until tender. You stir in the soup, drained tuna, mushrooms, peas, and a splash of milk. You scatter Parmesan over the top. You cover and heat through 5 minutes. The sauce coats every strand. The peas go bright green. The tuna breaks into tender flakes throughout. Tetrazzini was created in San Francisco around 1908, named for opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini. By 1962, the tuna skillet version was a weeknight standard in American working-class homes.